What is up, you guys? This is MiniSuperHeroes Today. This video will contain massive spoilers for The Mandalorian Season 3, so if you're not caught up on the latest episode, be sure to watch it and come back after that. Well, the end of The Mandalorian Season 3 is here, which means it's time to do the big Roundup showcase. This will take all 8 videos that I've made and compact them into one to show you how to make every main character from The Mandalorian Season 3 using 100% official LEGO parts and pieces, and maybe a couple customizations along the way. If you're new here, be sure to hit like and subscribe, and let's get into the video. So we start off the episode with the Armorer, interestingly enough, and what I did here is I used the official Armorer minifigure from LEGO Star Wars, the Mandalorian sub-theme, and I went ahead and added this gold shoulder pauldron there just to give her a little bit of extra fringe around the shoulders and to help bulk up the character just a little bit more. We get to see Paz Vizsla for just a brief moment in the opening, and since he's a main character that actually has a minifig, we should definitely show him off. So I just used the official Paz Vizsla minifig from the Armory set, or rather the Armorer's set. I think it's the Forge is the actual name of it, but regardless, this was a really great minifig out of the box, so not too much we can change on it to make it look better, and we'll keep moving on. Up next is the Mandalorian in his Beskar armor. Now, the good thing about this is he is the main character of the series, and he's pretty easy to get in LEGO form because he's come in a lot of sets at this point. The only thing I'll point out is that there is a version of him that has the Pedro Pascal head underneath, but because this season is all about him, you know, atoning for removing his helmet, I'm not really sure how much we're going to see Pedro Pascal's head, so I think any version of the figure you have will do just fine, and I really like the way that it looks straight out of the box. Here we have Grogu with his cradle, and of course, the Grogu figure is exactly the one we get from the sets because there's really nothing to customize, but this is the cradle that came in the Advent calendar. Now, what I did was I added a 2x2 white plate there to elevate the stud that he stands on, so, you know, it just helps you see him a little bit better and makes him stand up a little taller, and I removed the red 2x2 pieces with a ledge there and put them with white so it matches the show a little better, and the cradle from the set had 2x2 grill pieces here, and I went ahead and changed them from red to gray so that we get a little bit more muted colors for the final product that you see here. Here we have High Magistrate Greef Karga, and the thing I love about this is it looks so good with literally adding only one piece. So as you can see, the torso underneath comes from Greef Karga from the Mandalorian Season 2 wave of sets, but I added this cape piece that comes from the Judge minifigure, you know, the one from the CMF that looks a little something like this. So the thing that's cool about that is it gives you his big red flowing cape without necessitating any other parts, so it makes it really easy, and it's pretty rare to build a custom that looks this good and is this easy to build, so I'm super happy with the way it turned out. Here we have Vane, who's kind of like the Nikto alien pirate guy, and for the pirate look, I used the torso and legs from Yondu from Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, because let's face it, he's like the modern space pirate, you know, puzzle that we're building around, so he looks really, really good to use that. Of course, I put some brown hands on there to match what we saw in the show. I used the head from the Nikto character from the Clone Wars, because it looks really good, and I gave him a black beanie just to add a little bit of roughage around his head area there and make it look a little more accurate to what we see in the show. Here we have the disheveled IG-11 droid, and I like the way that this turned out because I just took the IG-11 minifig, removed an arm and the legs, and then I used a 1x1 stud with a clip on it, a 1x1 stud with a hollow point, and then this tailpiece to kind of make it look like he's got wires coming out of him, and that way you could have him crawl around and the weight is counterbalanced in the back so that he doesn't always fall straight over. I mean, he does if you don't, like, position him right, but at least you get a trying chance with this. Now, as of this video, there is no way to build a Babu Frick, and of course we meet the Anzellans in this episode, so I just wanted to throw something together that kinda looks like it, but not really. So basically I used the hood from Lucy from the Lego Movie 2, and then a whole bunch of studs, as you can see here, just to give a little bit of body. But again, I know that this doesn't look like Babu Frick at all. I just wanted to give something as a placeholder. If anybody has any suggestions how to build a Babu Frick, obviously drop them in the comments, because we're all wondering. We do get to spend a little time with Bo-Katan very briefly, so for this figure, you guessed it, I used the official Bo-Katan minifig. It was pretty much perfect right out of the gate. I may do an upgrade to the arms at some point, but for right now, I really like the way that this looks just right out of the box. And to wrap things up, we have the Pirate Captain Gorian Shard. Now, he has a big green leafy beard, and there are no LEGO pieces, in my opinion, that would pull that off pretty well, so I went with a beardless version. If somebody has a suggestion, drop it in the comments. But to build this, I used the torso from Taserface from Guardians Volume 2. I used these dull molded legs with dark brown on top, or dark brown on bottom, khaki on top. Put some green hands on there with the head from Martian Manhunter to give him a green head with red eyes. And the hair comes from Beast Boy from LEGO DC to pull the whole thing together. Our first character to look at is Peli Motto, who of course came in the Mandalorian N1 Starfighter set that came from the Book of Boba Fett line of sets. Now, I didn't make any upgrades here because the figure looks pretty much perfect right out of the box, and you might sense that we have a theme like that going today. Hanging around Peli Motto's shop, we have some pit droids, and this pit droid comes from one of the LEGO Star Wars Advent calendars, and we've got lots of Jawas, and over the years, LEGO's given us lots of Jawas, so I think you could just use any of those and fill in the gaps here. Now, up next is R5-D4, who played a pretty pivotal role in this episode, which was kind of cool to see him get a little bit more screen time. And, of course, we do have an official R5-D4 minifigure, so that's the one that I used. But I wanted to show you guys the trick of how to get his astromech leg. And basically, all you do is pull the figure up like this. You need a white cheese slope, a 1x1 stud with a hole in it, and then the lipstick piece to put like that. And then the lipstick piece can go in there, and now you have the additional leg for any of your astromechs. So I just thought that'd be a cool secret to show you guys here today. Of course, the Mandalorian and Grogu are in this episode. Man, who could have ever guessed that? For Grogu, you can check out last week where I explained how to build the cradle, but it's basically based off of the one from the Advent calendar from a while back. And then, of course, the Mandalorian is the same figure we've been getting for a while, but I took a black sword and took a little bit of white out along the edges to give it kind of that dark saber glow around the edges of it. So that technically isn't purist, but that's the best we can do. The other thing to point out, depending on when you're watching this video, we actually just got revealed that there's a cheaper set coming out that's the Mandalorian's N1 Starfighter, and that will have a new, better helmet print for the Mandalorian, which of course I would suggest using, but that doesn't come out until after this season is over, so you know, if you're watching this way in the future, use that part. If not, this is the part I'd suggest, because the only way to get that part right now is in the giant, like $600 or $700 Razor Crest, and most people aren't going to have that, so let's just use the most common denominator piece so as many of you guys can make these customs as possible. And finally, we have Bo-Katan and her messenger droid. Now, this is one of the medical droids from Star Wars. It's from The Empire Strikes Back. It's one of the droids that works on Luke and Hoth. And it's not the exact same droid, but if you were making a mock or you really needed that droid for something you're filming or playing with, this is probably the closest you can get. For Bo-Katan, I used the regular old Bo-Katan minifig. Of course, she also comes with a helmet that you could sub in there too, but I did change out her arms. These arms come from one of the medieval characters, I believe, and they're kind of like a gunmetal gray that matches her jetpack, and there's some black printing on there for some gauntlets. Now, her gauntlets are actually blue in the show, so it's not a perfect upgrade, but I was curious to see what you guys think. If you really like these, I'll leave them on for future episodes, and if you don't like them, I guess I can take them off. Or if you have a better suggestion, let me know, and maybe we'll update it along the way. Now, the Dr. Pershing episode did not really leave a lot of opportunity for customs to be made, so I didn't make any from that, but now we're going back and I'll show you how to make Dr. Pershing. So the head and hands that I used are from Bodhi Rook from Rogue One, with some flat top black hair, and the torso and legs from an Imperial officer engineer character from Star Wars. Those are relatively common, so hopefully you've got one in your collection, but yeah, pretty simple figure. Mandalorian has been spending time with other Mandalorians, and of course we need to build out our army. So the Mandalorians that I'm choosing to use in this video are the Mandalorian Loyalist from the Mandalorian Starship Bo-Katan set. Man, have I said Mandalorian a lot already this video. And then these four figures come from the Mandalorian Battle Pack from 2020. Now, that actually has not shot up in price the way I expected it to. It's like $25, $35 or so online right now, so I definitely would recommend picking that up because all four of these minifigs are awesome. So now we're going to build Paz Vizsla's son, Ragnar. Now, you'll notice that the helmet has a little modification to it because it is the helmet from this Mandalorian from the battle pack we just talked about, but I used a little bit of nail polish remover to remove the big purple spot from the helmet and on the side here to make it blue. So, you know, that does break the purist method, but it does look pretty good. So just be careful if you want to attempt to do that, and it can look pretty good. So that's what the helmet is. The torso comes from Last Jedi Kylo Ren. I gave him some of these kind of dark khaki arms with brown gloves, short mid-sized legs, which of course are the legs that are posable, as you can see, and then I gave him this skirt piece, which I think came from like a clone trooper at some point along the way, but it's probably come in a few places over the years. And then, of course, we had our Order 66 flashback. So for our 501st Trooper, we're just going to use a regular 501st. And the Jedi here is Kelleran Beq. Now, if you recognize the actor, he was played by Ahmed Best, who played Jar Jar Binks in the prequel. So it's pretty cool to see him kind of get redeemed here. And to build him in his Jedi form, I used the torso from Mace Windu from Episode 3, the head from Falcon from Marvel. Then, of course, I gave him a green and blue lightsaber to pull it together. And for his cloak, I gave him one of the short capes, which of course came on one of the Mandalorian figures, which we talked about. So I get to say Mandalorian 2 more times in this video. First, we have Captain Carson Teva. It was good to see him again, and he was kind of a prominent figure in this episode, which was pretty cool. So to build this figure, of course, I just used a regular old X-Wing pilot torso and legs, you know, from Luke or anything like that. Those work pretty well. And the head actually comes from Ben Kenobi. Kind of funny, we got Luke and Ben to make a completely unrelated character, but I do think it translates pretty well given the pieces available at the time of this video. Seeing Zeb in this episode was just about the last thing I expected, so it was awesome to see him make his big screen, or I guess on-screen debut. And of course for this, I just used one of the Y-Wing pilot torso and legs. I believe that's who this is from. I think that looks really good because of course he's got like the blue outfit, and then of course the head comes from the official Zeb figure, which unfortunately is pretty rare because it only ever came in one set, but it's hard to get more accurate than that, so that's what we're gonna use. And finally, we have Kane, Officer G68. Now, we did see her in an earlier episode, but I didn't make the figure for that episode. So here we go this time around. I used the legs and torso from the Republic officer from 2007, I think is when that set came out. Then the head comes from Tala from Obi-Wan Kenobi, and I used the hair from Falcon Captain America from the Marvel CMF. I think that works pretty well. The only thing is the head and hand colors don't match. I believe that these hands exist in that color, but I am a little bit in a rush this morning, so I haven't had time to dig those out, but I would just put hands on there that match the head. And finally, as a little update, as of the time of this video, the Vane minifigure is not officially out yet, but we are getting one in the Snub Fighter that's coming out a little bit later in 2023. So I just wanted to show you guys these figures here to explain that this character Vane will be getting an actual figure, and of course the pirate captain, it doesn't look like he's going to be getting a minifig, so for right now what I used for him is the flipped around torso from Taserface from Guardians of the Galaxy, dual molded legs, green hands, the head from Martian Manhunter, and green hair from Beast. So at the beginning of the episode, we've got a little Romeo and Juliet thing going on between a Quarren and a Mon Calamari. So to build these, I went ahead and used some pretty random pieces. Thank goodness we got a Quarren minifigure in the Book of Boba Fett, Boba Fett's Palace, because of course that's the head that I used, and I used the hands to match, and to kind of get her green dignitary outfit, I used a Rebel Trooper because the tentacles kind of cover up all the printing, and it gets the general vibe across without spending too much time worrying about getting every detail just perfect. As for the Mon Calamari dude, I used the head from Admiral Akbar. Then to get arms that match, I actually used the arms from Ellie Sattler from Jurassic World Dominion. Then I just put some brown hands on there because this shade is actually exceptionally hard to find. The only one that I could see in my collection from a quick glance was actually from Quarren. Since I only have one of that, I had to just use dark brown. And then this torso and legs come from a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles character. Honestly, I can't remember who, but I'm sure somebody in the comments will, so check down there. Axe Woves and Koska Reeves were back, and it's kind of interesting. I felt like in the last season, Koska Reeves was kind of the main one, and Axe Woves took the backseat, and then this time, it was the opposite, so kind of interesting there. Anyways, let's start with Koska. I used the torso and legs from one of the Mandalorians from the Mandalorian Battle Pack a couple years ago. Just works pretty well. The head comes from Barbara Gordon from the LEGO Batman movie, and she's got a pretty unique hairstyle, so the closest I could get is the Bruce Banner hair, but that's been used on a lot of figures too. Of course, she's got black gloves and a jetpack around back. Then we've got the same jetpack. Well, actually, it's not quite the same. This one looks a little bit more metallic, maybe. But anyways, it's the Mandalorian jetpack for Axe Woves. The head comes from Star-Lord or Bucky Barnes from a number of years ago. I gave him Finn's hair from Star Wars with the Clone Wars Mandalorian torso, silver arms, black gloves, and an ACU trooper's legs from Jurassic World. Duchess Lizzo and Jack Black were not on my Mandalorian Season 3 bingo sheet, but it was pretty random and cool to see them. Now, Lizzo's hair in this episode is pretty unique, and admittedly, there's no LEGO piece quite like it, but this hair that came from the bookshop modular set actually works pretty well to at least get you in the neighborhood. Then I used the head from Okoye from Black Panther. I gave her some arms to match, and the torso and legs come from Aisha from Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. Now, one of the characters, I think it's the Ravenclaw character from the giant Harry Potter castle, has a skirt piece that works, but unfortunately I don't have that, so as with customs, we've got to do the best with what we have in each of our collections. For Jack Black, I used some swept-back brown hair, the face from General Zod from the LEGO Batman movie collectible minifigure Series 2. Speaking of the Series 2, I used the beard from Hugo Strange. The torso actually comes from Commissioner Gordon from that exact same theme, the LEGO Batman movie. Then I gave him tan hands, dark blue legs, and the cape from Hyperion to add that little gold sash he's wearing over his shoulder. It's super cool to me that Christopher Lloyd is officially in Star Wars, and we've got to celebrate by making him a LEGO minifigure. So the torso and legs come from one of the Republic, frigate pilots from episode 1. That set came out in like 2007, I believe, but it's pretty good. It works pretty well for this. And the head actually comes from Doc Brown from the LEGO DeLorean, the Icons, the big giant DeLorean, because if you flip it around, you can see he's got his Back to the Future sunglasses on. But yeah, I think that this works really, really well, and I'm really happy with the way it turned out. Now, we saw a lot of droids in this episode, and we might be here for like 2 hours if I were to make every single droid from this episode alone, but we did get to meet a couple Ugnaughts. These are the official LEGO Ugnaughts. I didn't make any custom upgrades or anything. I think one was wearing like a red suit or whatever, but, you know, basically we just want these guys to be in the background working on droids, so not really worth spending too terribly much time, but if you have any specific suggestions how to build the ones from this episode, drop a comment. And like I said, we saw a lot of droids in this episode, and it was pretty cool to see some prequel-era battle droids here. And all I did was use the regular Super Battle Droid and the regular Battle Droid to, you know, represent what we saw in the episode. Can't really make any upgrades here unless you break out some paint pens, and I don't really feel like doing that just for this episode, so we're just going to leave these as is and zoom out so I can give you my final thoughts here. But we do have IG-12, which has Grogu on board. Now, I can't think of any way to get Grogu to be built into the torso, so the next best option is to use the baby cradle piece around IG-11's neck, and if you put the arms out, it does help with stability a little bit, so that way you can build IG-12 that has Grogu as the pilot. Moff Gideon is back, but this time he has lost the mustache, so we can't use the traditional Moff Gideon head from the only set that he ever came in, but we will need that figure for the torso, because that's still pretty accurate. So the torso is from Moff Gideon, the legs are from the Dark Trooper from the Mandalorian Season 2 set with Luke Skywalker in the hallway. The arms come from General Zod from the LEGO Batman movie collectible minifigure series. That way you get a little arm printing on there. The cape comes from one of the Mandalorians from the Mandalorian Battle Pack. The head I used comes from Mace Windu, but I'm sure that there are some alternate heads that if you guys want to drop some suggestions down below, we can all kind of share some ideas together down there. And the hair comes from Percival Graves from Harry Potter. That way you get a little bit of the gray hair on the side, and I like the way that that looks. According to Wikipedia, the troopers at the end are jump troopers, which of course we can recognize from the sequel trilogy, but these are more like prototypes. They're like half Mandalorian, half clone, half First Order, so unfortunately at this time, basically the closest we can get is to use the First Order trooper that you see here, but you know, it's close enough that if you're like trying to play out these scenes, you can pretend, but I'll be the first to admit the helmet isn't 100% accurate. So we're trying to get as close as possible without breaking out the Sharpies. And similarly, we see some Praetorian guards at the end, and those kind of have a Mandalorian feel too, but at present time, no figure exists that looks exactly like that, so we're going to use the Praetorian Guard from the Last Jedi sets to get us as close as we possibly can. Now, I thought I had more of these than just one, but I can't find any more than just this one in my collection, so Star Wars is becoming increasingly more like you have to have every figure because you literally never know who's going to show up from episode to episode, so I guess I need to continue filling in some gaps. Okay, so to kick things off this week, you guys had a great suggestion to use the prototype Boba Fett helmet for the Jump Troopers, so that's definitely the recommendation. So, you know, the Jump Trooper torso, backpack, all of that is still the same from last week, but this week we're gonna go ahead and upgrade with this helmet. Similarly, for Moff Gideon, you guys recommended using Gar Saxon's helmet, which he's getting pretty rare, so hopefully you have him, but it does work pretty well. I mean, yeah, the yellow visor isn't perfect, but it does work pretty well for this version of Moff Gideon, assuming LEGO doesn't give us a more accurate version. And then, one cool thing is, in the Disney 100 Years CMF, the Evil Queen actually comes with a red on the inside, black on the outside cape, so that's yet another place you could get that. Of course, one did come with Moff Gideon, but I did want to recommend that to you guys if you didn't get the original Moff Gideon and you want to come up with maybe a different torso. But as a quick recap from last week too, of course, we've got Moff Gideon's torso. We've got these arms from General Zod from the LEGO Batman movie and the legs from the Dark Trooper from Star Wars. Depending on when you're watching this video, I do want to point out that there are some Mandalorian figures that are coming out that aren't out as of this video, so I definitely recommend picking those up for the most accurate versions of these figures. Just remember that what you see here was made before those figures came out, so I'm doing the best I can with what's available right now. And we do see a rebuilt IG-11, however, when he's now the marshal for Greef Karga's town in Navarro, he does have like some red markings on the torso, but I don't really have any pieces that would work with that, so without breaking out the Sharpies, I think it's just best to use IG-88 or IG-11, depending on what you have in your collection. And as a fitting end to this showcase series, I thought I'd make the Dave Filoni cameo, which we get at the end of the episode. I used an X-Wing Luke Skywalker torso and leg combo for this, as well as the head from Sirius Black from Harry Potter and his iconic fedora. So, with that being said, let's finish out this showcase series. Alright guys, let me know what you thought of The Mandalorian Season 3 in the comments down below. And
well,
if
you made it to the end of the video. Thanks for hanging out with me today, and don't forget to hit like and subscribe, and maybe check out one of my other videos listed here.